The so-called gods were aliens. And what you are about to see is proof that these extraterrestrials were fighting each other for power, and one among them won the battle. The sky is dry, the land cracked, crops wither, rivers vanish, and across Israel, the people wait. On a high ridge overlooking the sea, 2 altars have been built. Stones stacked, bulls laid out. One side chants, the other watches. 850 prophets scream toward the heavens. 450 of Baal. 400 of Asherah. They dance. They cut themselves. They beg for fire. A single figure stands apart. His name is Elijah. No crown, no priesthood. Just a prophet and a challenge. The one Elohim who shall respond with fire. He is the one Elohim. All the people answered and said, "Good is the word which you have spoken." Then it happens. The fire falls. Not a flicker, a furnace. Not symbolism, consumption. The offering, the wood, the trench of water, even the stones themselves, vaporized. Silence erupts, knees collapse. No one doubts what they saw. Before the fire descended, before thunder returned to the sky, there was only silence and fear. Across the land of Israel, altars once dedicated to Yahweh stood abandoned, overgrown, or worse, converted. The smoke of sacrifice no longer rose to the god of the desert, but to new names. Baal, Asherah, Dagon, names that carried thunder, fertility, and empire in their wake. Shrines carved with serpents and lions appeared in the hills, and Asherah poles, sacred trees to the consort goddess, stood in public squares, not hidden but paraded. This was not the slow erosion of belief. It was a takeover. At the heart of this shift sat a queen. Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, high priest of Sidon's cult, came not only with dowry but with doctrine. She brought her gods into the king's palace and spread their worship into the land like flame on dry grass. Her marriage to Ahab was not a union of hearts. It was a political fusion of divine houses. And with it, the prophets of Yahweh were hunted, slaughtered, or driven into caves. The divine voice that once thundered on Sinai had vanished into the wind. From the ruins of old worship, only one figure stood openly. No priestly garments, no temple credentials, only a man of the wilderness named Elijah. He spoke a single sentence: "As Yahweh lives, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word." Then he disappeared. But the skies obeyed. Days turned to months, and months to years. Crops failed. Dust replaced rivers, and still Baal, lord of rain and storm, remained silent. So did Yahweh. Ancient texts from Ras Shamra, modern-day Ugarit, reveal that Baal was no passive idol. In those writings, he is called Rider of the Clouds, Master of Rain, and King of the Divine Council. His consort, Asherah, appears as the mother of 70 gods. These were not metaphors. They were functionaries, remembered by those who once served them. Their worship in Israel was not confusion, it was continuation. Now a confrontation had been arranged. Elijah returned and demanded proof, not in words, but in fire. On Mount Carmel, 450 prophets of Baal and 400 of Asherah assembled. 2 altars were built. 2 bulls were laid out. The terms were clear. The God who answers by fire, he would be God, the one in capital G. This is the moment where most retellings lean back in reverence. But here we shift focus. not to praise but to examine. Because what is about to unfold is not merely a theological argument or a ritual showdown. It is something older, something strategic. This is not the story of one prophet against many. It is the echo of an ancient war, one that began long before Israel, long before Jezebel or Ahab. A war between beings whose powers shaped cities, controlled weather, and demanded loyalty through spectacle and fear. If even fragments of these texts are memory, not myth, then what we are witnessing is not miracle. It is power deployment, protocol, suppression, domination. To decode this, we must descend into older histories, into the world beneath the page. To see beyond the surface, we must expose the war behind the pages. It begins with a word, one that has stood at the center of scripture, debate, and doctrine for millennia: Elohim. Translated simply as God, it appears over 2,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. But its form is unmistakably plural. In Hebrew grammar, the suffix im designates multiplicity: cherubim, seraphim, and Elohim, not God, but gods. For generations, scholars and believers have strained this word through theology to extract singularity from plurality. But what if the text is resisting that reduction? What if the word was never meant to collapse into a single throne, but to hint at a council of powers? The story of Yahweh, especially in its earliest layers, is not a tale of a lone sovereign, but of a deity who emerges from among rivals. In the fragments of Israel's oldest poetry, Deuteronomy 32, Psalm 82, Job 1, we see flickers of this older theology. Yahweh does not stand alone. He presides over a divine assembly. He is given a portion, a territory, an inheritance. When the Most High, the El Elyon, divided the nations, Deuteronomy says, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of El. But Yahweh's portion is his people. El Elyon, the Most High, is a separate being. Yahweh is one among many. And Elohim assigned a domain. This vision is not confined to obscure verses. In Psalm 82, the scene is explicit. Elohim stands in the divine council. In the midst of the Elohim, he judges. The text describes a courtroom, a tribunal. Yahweh speaks among other deities, condemns some to death, and asserts judgment. This is not metaphor. It is the lingering trace of an older cosmology, a world where multiple gods ruled over regions, competed for loyalty, and shaped history with divine force. Monotheism, in this light, is not the starting point. It is the result of a conquest. That conquest is nowhere clearer than at Mount Carmel. When Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal, the terms are not theological, they are territorial. 2 gods, 2 altars, one must answer. This is not a test of belief, it is a demonstration of force, a declaration of supremacy in the format of ritual warfare. Fire becomes the metric of divinity. The God who commands it, visibly, publicly, without ambiguity, claims dominion. Elijah does not argue theology. He does not appeal to scripture or law. He lays down a challenge. The God who answers by fire, he is Elohim. But even in that challenge, the language betrays the underlying pluralism. He is Elohim, not there is no other. The people do not respond with monotheistic doctrine. They say, Yahweh, he is Elohim, as though selecting him from among others. The text reveals a moment of conversion, not to the concept of one universal deity, but to the superiority of a particular power. This idea of gods competing is not unique to Israel. It permeates the ancient Near East. In Ugaritic tablets excavated from Ras Shamra, Baal appears not as fiction, but as a ruling storm deity, fighting wars, commanding weather, building temples in the sky. He does not speak in metaphors. He wields weapons. His enemies are named. His victories are carved in cuneiform. Asherah, his consort, is not allegory. She is listed among the divine family, the Queen Mother, the goddess of the sea. And in some inscriptions, a figure named Yah or YHW appears, not as a supreme god, but as a regional power within a pantheon. Could this be Yahweh before the edits? A local storm god ascending through history into dominance. Archaeologically, the pattern suggests it. In inscriptions from Kuntilat Adrud in Sinai, Yahweh is mentioned alongside Asherah, not as metaphor, but as consort. Yahweh and his Asherah, the text reads. This pairing, scandalous to later orthodoxy, reflects an earlier theological layer, one erased by scribes but preserved in stone. It is the echo of a time when Yahweh stood among the gods, not above them. The political stakes of such theology are immense. If Yahweh was once one among many, then the evolution of Israelite religion was not merely spiritual, it was geopolitical. It involved the erasure of rival cults, the centralization of ritual, and the rewriting of history to present Yahweh as always and only supreme. Monotheism, then, was not an original revelation. It was a campaign, and Mount Carmel was one of its bloodiest victories. The fire that fell did more than consume a sacrifice. It symbolically burned away the competition. Baal, the storm god, was silenced by drought and defeated by fire. Asherah's prophets were executed, their altars torn down, and Yahweh, the once regional deity, emerged as the singular voice of the nation. But the texts, when left unedited, tell a different story. A story of councils, of wars, of gods who fought for land, loyalty, and legacy. When Elijah emerged from obscurity and delivered his proclamation, "There shall be no dew nor rain these years except by my word," the declaration struck like a curse. Yet behind the language of divine judgment lies a possibility seldom examined, that this was not solely the act of Yahweh Elohim, but a calculated deployment of environmental control. What if the drought that gripped the land for years was not an arbitrary miracle, but a strategic operation, technological in nature, designed to exert psychological, agricultural, and political dominance? The ancient Near East depended entirely on the rhythm of the skies. Rain was sustenance, but also sovereignty. In Canaanite faith, Baal was the rider of the clouds, the god who fertilized the land through storm. Shrines to him crowned hilltops, not as symbols, but as nodes of invocation to manipulate the atmosphere. When Baal rode the storm, the earth flourished. When he withdrew, famine struck. To worship was to ensure one's crops. Control of rain was control of survival. So when Elijah, acting under the command of Yahweh, halted the heavens, the act was surgical. It wasn't merely a moral gesture, it was an attack on Baal's dominion. Yahweh, once a regional storm god himself in early Canaanite strata, was demonstrating superior mastery over the same domain. In doing so, he dismantled Baal's reputation at its core. Crops failed, livestock perished, the soil cracked. The skies became silent. Baal, the supposed lord of rain, was rendered impotent. What theology calls miracle was, in essence, a form of atmospheric warfare. Ancient Mesopotamian records give striking parallels. Anu and Enlil, high among the Anunnaki, were recorded as controlling storms and droughts, opening the storehouses of the winds, or sealing the waters of heaven. These descriptions sound less like mythic verse and more like technical operations, commands, not metaphors. On cylinder seals, Enlil wields a rod surrounded by lightning, Anu by stars and swirling currents. Such imagery suggests a structured system, beings in command of environmental regulation, perhaps through mechanisms beyond human comprehension. If Yahweh inherited or accessed similar systems, Elijah's drought could represent a surviving fragment of Anunnaki technology. A reactivated atmospheric command, ritualized, mythologized, but fundamentally technological. His words, "by my word," sound like activation of authority, as though he holds a key, a code, or a command protocol. This is not petition, but execution. The notion of weather as weapon is no longer confined to ancient speculation. In the modern era, programs like HAARP, the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, have been rumored to manipulate the ionosphere, redirect atmospheric energy, and influence weather patterns. Officially, HAARP serves communication research, yet the scope of its power, high-energy arrays capable of injecting electromagnetic waves into the upper atmosphere, hints at greater potential. Even more concrete is Operation Popeye, conducted by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War, which seeded clouds to extend monsoon rains, flooding supply routes. Declassified documents confirm weather was weaponized. If today's limited technologies can alter climate on small scales, what might beings with access to planetary systems have achieved thousands of years ago? Could El Elyon, the Most High, have delegated such control to his subordinates, divine engineers among the Elohim? Could Yahweh have been one of these operators, maintaining atmospheric authority inherited from the celestial hierarchy of El and the Anunnaki? The drought lasted 3.5 years, a precise duration. Long enough to collapse agriculture, to break cultic dependency on Baal, to drive the people into submission, but not long enough to annihilate the nation. It was measured, calculated, tactical. This was subjugation by scarcity. Psychologically, it dismantled the old order. The faithful of Baal lost trust. Even Queen Jezebel, high priestess of Baal, found her rituals powerless. The silence of the heavens became an existential void. And into that void, Yahweh Elohim stepped, not only as covenant keeper, but as climate controller, architect of atmospheric dominion. Viewed strategically, this was siege warfare executed through the skies. Sever supply lines, erode faith in rival leadership, induce desperation, then restore power through controlled mercy. This was not the act of a passive God. It was the maneuver of a commander neutralizing opposition. The drought was not punishment. It was proof of dominion. Elijah's declaration encapsulates this dynamic perfectly. There shall be no rain except by my word. Not Elijah's arrogance, but a coded transmission from Yahweh Elohim, relayed through a chosen operative with access to an ancient interface. If Yahweh possessed remnant technology of weather modulation, ionization, cloud dispersion, atmospheric field manipulation, then the miracle becomes comprehensible. The prophet becomes technician, the God becomes strategist, and the heavens themselves transform into the battleground of divine engineering. Elijah's journey into the wilderness was never a passive exile. It was a calculated withdrawal to a zone of control. When the skies sealed and every riverbed ran dry, he retreated to Wadi Cherith, beside a trickling brook east of the Jordan, into terrain that still whispered life. There, in that hollow of desolation, he did not perish. He sustained himself, not by miracle alone, but by intervention so discreet the text presents it in plain terms. Ravens brought him bread and meat, morning and evening. The conventional reading treats those ravens as divine messengers, symbols of ephemeral provision. But what if they were more? What if they were aerial supply agents? Drones or emissaries dispatched from a hidden base, delivering sustenance to a lone operative isolated for mission. In this view, the valley becomes a staging ground, the ravens a logistics system, and Elijah's survival a live demonstration of concealed infrastructure. The Hebrew uses the word auv, ravens, repeatedly. Yet ancient authors often cloaked technical processes in animal metaphor to conceal real systems. Could auv be a code for skycraft, autonomous drones, or remote feeders? They come and go daily. They navigate corrosive terrain. They locate Elijah with precision. Such behavior aligns with programmed supply units more than random flocking birds. If Elijah was backed by a clandestine supply base, subterranean stores, maintenance nodes, remote control arrays, the ravens become intermediaries, delivering from that hidden grid. Imagine underground silos preserving grain and meat, connected to sky vehicles programmed to seek Elijah's location and drop provisions. The wilderness is not void, it is a conduit. The skies above, while silent in worship, are busy with roots. Isolation is strategy, not punishment. Elijah's removal from public view did not sever communication, it insulated him. A prophet hidden is less vulnerable. A wilderness base is less compromised. The skies over him do not remain empty, they pulse. The ravens are watchers, couriers, data nodes. The brook beneath him may supply water, but nourishment comes by air. In this model, Elijah's wilderness mission is a covert operation, not spiritual retreat. His loyalty to Yahweh Elohim becomes trust in the hidden power sustaining him. The populace sees silence. The network hums. The prophet lives. No shepherd brings bread. No pilgrim offers meat. The ravens arrive, then vanish, precisely timed. This motif echoes ancient myth. In Sumerian lore, the Anunnaki sometimes used bird-like agents like Anzu, not merely beasts, but couriers, watchers, divine intermediaries. Anzu steals the tablet of destinies. Anzu flies between realms. He is part creature, part messenger. Could the Hebrew ravens encode a refashioned memory of such emissaries, stripped of terror, adapted to prophetic narrative? Even within the biblical frame, the narrative treats the ravens not as miracles, but as routine. Day after day, twice daily, the supply comes. Their reliability becomes mechanistic, disciplined beyond natural precedent. They obey. They return. The pattern hints at protocol more than providence. Consider a hidden facility in the hills, buried chambers, storage vats, maintenance ducts. Elijah's route through the wilderness avoids population centers. His path aligns with less traveled terrain. He dwells beside a brook where water lingers, but his sustenance is skyborne. Ravens, camouflaged drones, aerial devices, drop rations. They might also carry sensors, monitoring temperature, sky metrics, danger vectors, or signaling stations. This reading reshapes the prophetic mission. Elijah is not a loner. He is a node in a covert divine network. His base is concealed. His supply line is aerial. His public appearances mask a sustained infrastructure. The wilderness is not abandonment, it is deployment. His presence becomes an operative point in a hidden grid. Such a reading does not diminish the script, it deepens it. The ravens remain ravens in the telling. But behind the metaphor lies memory of engineering. The wilderness hums, the skies pulse. The prophet is sustained by silent wings, and when Elijah finally emerges, rebuilt, resupplied, resolute, he is no mere voice. He is an operative reactivated, emerging not by chance, but by design. What if some miracles are memory of engineered stealth operations? What if the ravens were drones? What if Elijah's base was not earth, but hidden architecture? What if the wilderness was never empty, but alive with unseen systems? Elijah stepping into Zarephath was not an act of charity, it was an incursion. When Yahweh Elohim commanded, "Go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon," it was not a humanitarian gesture, but a strategic insertion into Baal's heartland. Zarephath lay deep in Baal's domain. By walking into that territory, Elijah crossed cultic, cultural, and divine frontiers. In the city, he found a widow gathering sticks, her food supply exhausted. She told him, "I have only a handful of meal in a jar and a little oil in a cruse. I am gathering sticks now to prepare it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah's response crushed despair. "Do as you have said, but first make me a small cake from it and bring it to me, and afterward make one for yourself and your son. For thus says Yahweh Elohim, the jar of meal shall not be exhausted, and the cruse of oil shall not fail until the day Yahweh sends rain upon the earth." That promise is more than a miracle. It asserts command over scarcity. In a land afflicted by drought, sustaining supply is exercising sovereignty. The narrative says the widow's jar never emptied, and her oil did not fail. That continuity is not simply mercy, it is evidence of resource network infrastructure extending even into Baal's sphere. Then tragedy struck. Her son died. She accused Elijah, "Have you come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to take away my son?" Elijah carried the boy to an upper chamber, laid him on his bed, and prayed. He stretched himself over the child 3 times, calling for life to return. Eventually, Yahweh heard. The boy revived. In that foreign city, under Baal's shadow, life was restored. By the way, if you want to explore the Bible in its original Hebrew, I have another channel called Biblical Movies and Stories. There, I bring biblical stories from canonical, apocryphal, and non-canonical books to life. I don't bring the Anunnaki lens there, but that channel is something of a revolutionary project. There, I present the translation from the original Hebrew with its raw, authentic language. For some, the Bible is a source of faith. For others, like me, it's a source of study, theology, and history. If that resonates with you, check it out. In Sidon's domain, where Baal's priests once commanded clouds, here was a prophet commanding life. The audience, Phoenician priests, local leaders, the widow's household. The message: Yahweh's reach crosses borders. His authority penetrates rival cult infrastructure. This accomplishes much. It undermines Baal's prestige. The storm god fails to protect children, fails to preserve life, fails in his domain. A foreign deity acting in Baal's home domain in life and death inverts the hegemony. If Yahweh can sustain and restore life where Baal held court, then loyalty may shift. But the mission is more than spectacle. The widow becomes a witness, a convert, a foothold. Her testimony, "Now I know that you are a man of Elohim and that the word of Yahweh in your mouth is truth," turns a household into a node of allegiance in Baal's territory. It's not just healing, it's infiltration. This demonstration signals to regional elites. Yahweh is willing to operate across cultic borders, to disrupt resource control, to anticipate resistance. It says, no domain is secure. Yahweh's authority is universal, not confined to Israel alone. Sidon was no fringe town. It traded with Ugarit, Tyre, across the Mediterranean. Inscriptions in Phoenician and Ugaritic reveal cults of Hadad Baal with titles and functions paralleling Mesopotamian deities. The overlay of deity names suggests that local gods were regional orchestras in a broader cosmic network, perhaps built by Anunnaki infrastructure. Elijah operating in that sphere is rebellion in divine terms. This chapter frames Yahweh not as tribal God, but as expanding power. The sustenance, the resurrection, each becomes claim to jurisdiction. If Yahweh can keep resources and life operative within Baal's borders, then Baal's claim collapses. If Yahweh's network functions across regions, his sovereignty transcends prophecy and becomes political fact. In the midst of drought and death, through a widow's simple hearth, Yahweh stakes claim. His domain is not Israel alone. His power steps into the territory of rivals. And in that movement, the war of gods, once distant, lands in real soil, in human families, with consequences inscribed in blood and rain. The crescendo of the confrontation arrives not through whispered warnings, but through an open challenge. On Mount Carmel, Elijah frames the encounter not as worship, but as power contest. He demands parity. Each side builds an altar, places a bull, but neither lights a fire. The test hinges on which God can project force into matter. There is no hidden trick, no combustible fuel beneath the wood. The altars are dry. The invocation must be public. The outcome will depend on which Elohim can manifest energy in the world. At sunrise, the prophets of Baal begin their ritual. They cry, they dance, they tremble, they slash themselves, invoke the winds, plead, scream, bleed. Hours pass. Nothing answers. The wind stirs, the heat intensifies. The priests grow desperate. Their ritual becomes chaos. Their God is silent. Elijah's counter is stillness. He does not cry, he mocks. Cry louder. Perhaps Baal meditates, or is journeying, or has turned aside, or sleeps and must be awakened. In those barbs lies confidence, not frenzy. The contrast is stark. Frenzy on Baal's side, control on Elijah's. Doubt infects the crowd. The stage is shifting. Then Elijah rebuilds Yahweh's altar, using 12 stones, one for each tribe. He recreates the covenantal foundation. He digs a trench around it. He lays wood and the bull. Then he commands 4 jars of water to be poured. Not once, twice, but 3 times, over wood, sacrifice, stone, and trench. The altar is soaked. The ground floods. No human fire could ignite that. At his word, fire descends. Not flicker, but furnace. It consumes wood, sacrifice, stone, ground, even water. The heat vaporizes. It erases. It is energy projection, not ritual. The earth burns. The people fall prostrate. The ritual is not symbolic. It is kinetic power. Force moves from heaven to altar to earth. In that moment, spectacle becomes authority. The crowd becomes audience to divine engineering. The previous metaphors collapse. Baal's priests are exposed. Their rituals fail. Yahweh's authority is seen, not merely claimed. Myth turns into demonstration. The contested claim becomes visible fact. But the spectacle is not careless. It is precisely engineered. The 12 stones reference tribal unity, identity, covenant. The trench works as both fire control and visual amplifier. The wetness ensures that no hidden fire source exists. The timing, the hour of offering, forces Baal's hand. If his power exists, it must respond now. Elijah sets the rules. He forces exposure. This is ancient trial by fire, but upgraded. No swords, no armies. Only one test, which deity can blaze through resistance. Elijah voices the protocol. If Yahweh cannot pass, then his claim fails. But when the fire comes, the verdict is irreversible. Authority shifts. Belief braces itself around a demonstrated power. The echo of divine contests spans mythic histories. In Akkadian tradition, in texts like the Enuma Elish, Marduk battles Tiamat, defeats the forces of chaos, and claims supremacy over lower gods. Like those contests, Mount Carmel is a reenactment of cosmic competition, recast in covenantal Israelite language, but preserving the structure of divine warfare. Fire is not magic, it is control. The altar is not passive stone, it is interface. The crowd is not passive worshippers, they are witnesses and voters in allegiance. In that moment, Yahweh Elohim does not simply triumph in theology, he seizes supremacy. He is not just chosen, he is declared. The war among gods halts, at least on this mount. The altar becomes a proving ground, the people recalibrated, the dominance of Yahweh made unambiguous. When fire fell and Baal's priests were exposed as powerless, the drama of that moment segued not into mercy, but into politics. Elijah did not leave the silence hanging. He commanded that every one of Baal's prophets be seized, escorted down to the brook Kishon, and struck down without mercy. What later traditions frame as judgment or cleansing of idolatry must instead be seen as surgical purging, a precise neutralization of rival divine networks, and a declaration that Yahweh Elohim was rewriting the rules of supremacy. Elijah's command is devoid of emotion. He does not debate guilt or plead mercy. He says, "Seize them, let not one escape." The execution is staged by water. The brook runs red. The symbolism of cleansing waters turns violent. This is not ritual, it is strategic removal. The instruments are not incense burners, but blades. The elimination is total. The rival priesthood is erased. Seen through the lens of power, this is not spiritual housekeeping. The prophets of Baal were not mere priests. They were nodes in a rival divine structure. They oversaw teaching, ritual authority, local trust, and cultic legitimacy. Removing them is equivalent to dismantling a rival administrative system. It is removing the capacity for dissent, the infrastructure of opposition. The locus of divine dispute is not doctrine, it is institution. The purge clears the ground for exclusive divine control. In modern political terms, this purge mirrors the elimination of governors, ministers, or clandestine agents after conquest. No rival remains. No alternative voice. The theological language overlays the violence with righteousness, but beneath the veneer pulses the logic of power consolidation. The cults of Baal had lost credibility. Yahweh must now demand obedience. The narrative gives the moral after the fact. The purge itself is recast as proof. After the massacre, the people said, "Yahweh, He is Elohim. Yahweh, He is Elohim." The removal becomes worship. The execution becomes authority. The purge is sanctified. The choice of Kishon is not incidental. The brook, once a symbol of cleansing water, now becomes the site of massacre. The earth drinks blood. The terrain witnesses divine enforcement. The site echoes covenant metaphors twisted into power rituals. The land itself participates in the purge. This is not novelty. The motif of divine purging is ancient. In Babylonian myth, when Marduk climbed to power, he did not negotiate. He destroyed rival gods, demoted them, subsumed them. The violent reorganization of pantheons is a recurrent pattern. Even Enlil and Enki adjust functions, suppress opposition, and reassign domains. The move from many gods with overlapping authority to a centralized divine regime is rarely peaceful. It is missionary, hegemonic, violent. What Elijah does on Kishon is not vengeance. It is divine executive enforcement. But the biblical narrative wraps it in covenantal terms. The land is cleansed. The people recognize Yahweh is Lord. The violence is grafted into theology. The sacred text repackages conquest as worship. The purge is not deviation from faith. It is the mechanism through which faith is enforced. By eliminating rival voices, Yahweh ensures that only one voice remains, that of the prophet, the sole mediator, the exclusive God. The spiritual landscape is leveled. The possibility of alternative claims is erased. The prophetic field is reset. Future prophets speak not from a contested pantheon, but from a monopolized divine podium. Through this purge, Yahweh does not just claim spiritual authority, he claims total jurisdiction over divine narrative. The showdown at Carmel was not a ritual debate, it was warfare. Fire asserted supremacy, blood sealed it. The triumph of Yahweh over Baal lies not just in flame, but in the silence imposed by blade. When Elijah emerged from the drought-sealed heavens and commanded the clouds to break, he did not do so as a petitioner begging mercy. He spoke as an operator initiating a system reboot. After years of silence, after Baal had failed before fire, this moment was not compassion. It was protocol. He sent his servant 7 times to scan the horizon. Each time, nothing, no movement, no promise. On the 7th, the report came. Behold, a cloud, small as a man's hand, is rising from the sea. That faint smear would become the seed of engineered weather. 7 is never incidental in ritual systems. It is covenant, completeness, cosmic order. To call the sky 7 times is to enact a schedule, not a prayer. That first vapor was the trigger, the system going live. Cloud nucleation, ionization adjustment, moisture channels, whatever ancient tech sustained the sky, began to align. The vapor coalesces, condenses, thickens, the horizon darkens. Then thunder rolls, rain pours, the parched earth drinks. This return is not mercy, it is reassertion of legitimacy. The same system Yahweh shut down, he now restores. Yahweh Elohim is not offering grace, he is executing sovereignty over storm. Drought was silencing Baal, rain is reclaiming the sky, the domain of Baal shrinks, the domain of Yahweh expands. If the fire on Carmel was raw energy deployment, the rain is the follow-up. 2-phase control. First, isolation and denial, then calibrated restoration. Onlookers see blessing, but beneath it runs climate calibration. They witness system reboot, not generosity. We can imagine triggers: cloud seeding, ionization modulation, electromagnetic fields, aerosol dispersal. In modern analogs, planes release condensation nuclei, silver iodide, to coax clouds into rain. Operation Popeye, during the Vietnam War, extended the monsoon by cloud seeding over the Ho Chi Minh Trail to disrupt supply lines. If modern states can partially command weather systems, what might more advanced civilizations, Anunnaki or their legacy systems, have achieved? But the symbolic architecture matters. Rain does not rush in torrents. It returns measured. First a whisper, then abundance. Its arrival is timed after the purge, after the silence, after the display. The sequence says drought, then trial, then judgment, then renewal. The quantity is controlled, reviving the land, not flooding it. The narrative demands predictability. People see cause and effect, command, then reign. Allegiance is stamped in water. Reclaiming storm control is reclaiming divine domain. In Ugaritic texts, Baal was storm, thunder, fertility. He held authority over rain. When Yahweh wrested control back, he undercut the very foundation of Baal's worship. The cosmic contract shifted. The power once attributed to Baal is absorbed. This clash echoes older Anunnaki conflicts, Enlil versus Enki. Sky gods contesting weather. Cloud, storm, wind, they aren't myth, they are battlegrounds. The drought rain protocol is layered narratively, technically, spiritually. In that moment, rain is no longer blessing. It is proof. Nature no longer yields to faith. It obeys command. The system resets. Yahweh doesn't just speak with fire. He calibrates the sky. Each drop that falls is not mercy. It is a signature, a stamp, a renewal of dominion. Jezebel is often dismissed as a brutal queen, but beneath that caricature lies the portrait of a priestess consort, a divine agent enmeshed in cultic networks, and a frontline general in the war of gods. Her union with Ahab was not merely dynastic, it was jurisdictional merger. She brought the priesthood of Baal and Asherah into Israel, complete with prophets, altars, and ritual apparatus. She was not a consort in name only. She held administrative authority over worship, ritual oversight, and the allegiance of cultic factions in Israelite land. Her lineage matters. Jezebel was daughter of Baal, king of the Sidonians, a court steeped in Baal and Asherah worship. Phoenician religion treated Baal not as poetic principle, but as active force, storms, fertility, rain, life cycles. Temples, altars, shrines, and priesthoods made up a tight cultic structure. Jezebel was raised within that structure. She did not arrive as an interloper. She carried legitimate cultic lineage. Her presence extended Baal's network into Israel. Her courts hosted prophets of Baal and Asherah. She was the earthly face of a divine faction. When the news of Carmel's outcome reached her, she did not respond as a king betrayed. She responded as a deity ward confronting a defeated rival. She dispatched a message. "Thus shall the Elohim do to me, and more also, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of theirs." Behind that threat lies audacity, confidence in divine sponsorship. She frames her retaliation not as personal vengeance, but as action of her gods. The threat is cosmic, not local. It signals she is not a queen, but a priestess general, executing divine discipline through human proxies. Her campaign after the defeat was not scattered. She deployed agents, hunted prophets, spread terror. Elijah's flight was not cowardice. It was tactical retreat before an escalating divine counterattack. Jezebel did not fight the religion of Israel. She confronted a rival divine lord. Her pursuit of Elijah across borders and wilderness shows her resolve to reclaim spiritual territory. Viewed this way, Jezebel's narrative is one of divine bloodlines reclaiming lost authority. That she could marshal cultic machinery and threaten a prophet underlines that her faction remained powerful even in drought. Her priests, rituals, influence were not fully dismantled. She served as regent of the Baal network within Israel, asserting sovereignty even over skies grown silent. Phoenician and Ugaritic myth provide a deeper framing. Priestesses of Asherah, Tanit, and Baal held authority in their cities, not symbolic placeholders, but oracles, ritual managers, temple overseers. Jezebel likely descends from those priestly lines, inheriting legitimacy in cosmic conflict. Her tomb is not accidental. Her threat is not hubris. It is defense of a faction in decline. Jezebel is not incidental. She is a strategic node. She was not collateral. She was co-combatant. Threatening Elijah, orchestrating persecution, wielding cult power, Jezebel acted as Baal's frontline priestess. Her fate would not fall by random retribution. It would be determined by which god held fire, rain, and narrative. He stood within the cave on Mount Horeb, battered by desert wind and haunted by silence. The prophet who once called down fire now trembled beneath stone, waiting for the presence of El Shaddai, the almighty power who had once shaken Sinai in flame. But the storm did not speak. The earthquake did not answer. The fire passed, and in its wake came only stillness. Then, the text says, came a still small voice. For centuries, this phrase has been wrapped in reverence, read as humility, the Almighty lowering himself to gentle tone. But what if the still voice was not a metaphor for meekness? What if it was contact protocol, a controlled signal calibrated for one mind alone? The cave was not refuge. It was a chamber of transmission. Across ancient civilizations, caves served as thresholds, wombs of earth, gateways between realms, insulated nodes for contact with powers beyond sight. The prophet entered not merely to hide, but to connect. First came the wind, an atmospheric surge, then the quake, seismic oscillation, then the fire, thermal discharge. Each phenomenon tested environmental channels. And then, when noise subsided, the resonance emerged. Not thunder, not flame, signal. The whisper of Yahweh Elohim Tsevaot, the Lord God of hosts. The phrasing itself suggests command hierarchy. Elohim, a council of powers. Tsevaot, hosts or armies. Celestial forces under structured order. What spoke from the stillness was not abstract divinity. It was authority transmitting through calibrated frequency. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was not curiosity. It was an initiation command. The prophet replied, "I have been very zealous for Yahweh Elohim Tsevaot. The sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and slain your prophets. I alone am left, and they seek my life." Then the response came, clear, directive, procedural. "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Aram. Anoint Jehu son of Nimshi as king over Israel. Anoint Elisha son of Shaphat as prophet in your place. Yet I will preserve 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal." These are not mystical sayings. They are operational orders, a coordinated handoff between command and field operative. 3 targets, 3 installations of authority. A contingency count, 7,000 loyal units preserved. The whisper delivers mission parameters. This is not prayer. This is data transmission. The divine presence here, whether one calls him Yahweh El Elyon, the Most High, or El Shaddai, the force of the mount, communicates through resonance, not ritual. The voice is neither sound nor symbol. It is a focused interface, a neural or quantum conduit linking the consciousness of the prophet to the network of the divine. The sound is perceived not by ear, but by mind. It bypasses air and enters awareness directly. The cave's geometry matters. Enclosed stone reduces external interference, channeling vibrational energy. In such a configuration, rock acts as resonant shielding, a natural Faraday chamber amplifying inward frequencies. The mantle Elijah carried, heavy with woven cords, may have served as conductive fabric, a primitive receptor tuned to the field of Elohim. The entire scene behaves less like mysticism and more like a controlled communication environment. Across Sumerian and Akkadian texts, similar interfaces are recorded. The Anunnaki transmitted through Nemu, mental resonance, the voice between minds. They warned, commanded, or guided chosen agents by impulses, not words. The Hebrew account mirrors that protocol precisely: fire, quake, wind as failed contact attempts, followed by the successful channel of silent voice. When the resonance ceases, Elijah emerges transformed, not ecstatic, but instructed. He departs Horeb with clear tactical directives: kings to be installed, succession secured, remnants preserved. He no longer waits for signs, he executes commands. He has shifted from receiver to transmitter, from prophet to operative. The whisper ends, the mission begins. This moment on Horeb unveils the deeper layer of the prophetic system. Yahweh Elohim does not dwell solely in storm or temple. He operates through field resonance, a technology of consciousness bridging dimensions. The prophets were not merely inspired, they were linked. Their visions were downloads, their utterances, transmissions. The lesson encoded in this scene is that prophecy was never mere mysticism, it was interface. The whisper is signal, the cave is node, the mantle is device. And the mission that follows is execution of command within a vast, hidden architecture of divine strategy, an operation directed by El Elyon, administered through Yahweh Elohim Tsevaot, executed by human agents in flesh. When the still small voice spoke, it did not soothe, it activated. And from that moment, Elijah no longer wandered in silence, he moved with purpose, bearing the resonance of the gods within his mind, the encoded frequency of El Shaddai, whispering through human consciousness, guiding the war that heaven waged upon earth. When the moment of departure arrived, it was not a fading into legend. The text paints a spectacle, a chariot of fire, horses of fire, and a whirlwind that seized Elijah upward. The Hebrew narrative states the prophet was taken up into heaven by a whirlwind, but read closely. This is not mythic ascension, it is extraction, a technical relocation rather than death. The horses of fire and the chariot are not embellishment. They function like craft, propelled by energy fields, intense in luminosity, swift in motion. The storm that envelops the ascent is not mere wind, but a protective field, an energy envelope around the extraction point. The chariot is not a throne. It is a vessel capable of carrying a human body beyond atmospheric or dimensional boundaries. Elijah does not die. There is no fall, no corpse, no burial. He vanishes. That fact alone demands scrutiny. In other ancient accounts, figures like Enoch or Gilgamesh are said to have been taken rather than dying, lifted out of the human domain. This motif recurs in Mesopotamian and mystical traditions. Certain individuals cross thresholds, not by death, but by transition, departing the mortal plane by divine or engineered means. Here, a human operative is extracted by Yahweh Elohim's method. Watching, Elisha cries, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen." He sees Elijah ascending and witnesses the mantle fall. That mantle, Elijah's cloak, is not mere cloth. It is an interface, a symbolic token, a functional transfer device. When Elisha picks it up, he inherits not just role, but the signal conduit, the node to which Yahweh's power remains connected. The mantle carries imprint, pattern, and compatibility for future contact within the divine network. With that instrument, Elisha strikes the Jordan and parts it, mirroring Elijah's former miracle. The Spirit rests upon him. Authority passes. This is not mystical reward, it is protocol continuity. The successor inherits not only blessing, but access to the same operative infrastructure. Elijah's legacy does not end in mortality, he is promised return. His chariot release becomes a template. One day he will be called back. The horizon of prophecy extends beyond death, beyond tomb, into redeployment. The promise of return is not resurrection, it is operative continuity. The mission remains. If the chariot is craft and the whirlwind is an energy envelope, then Elijah's body does not lie behind. The ground does not claim him. The earthly plane is not final. He is pulled upward, beyond atmospheric limits, into spatial corridors beyond human vision. The craft carries him to other realms, into orbit, into unknown zones, into dimension interfaces. The heaven he enters is not vague mysticism, but high orbit, craft interior, or dimensional domain. The narrative recedes into metaphor only for later readers. Behind it lies extraction engineering. By reframing this as extraction instead of death, the story refuses closure. Elijah is not slain, he is removed. His mantle is not relic but conduit. The prophetic axis remains. The divine conflict is not ended, it continues elsewhere. Yahweh, Elohim's war carries on. Elijah's removal is pause, not termination. Across civilizations, the divine has often been dressed in poetry and praise, but behind the hymns lies a darker record. What modern belief calls theology may have begun as divine warfare. The narrative we see in the Elijah saga is not simply a God calling worshippers, it is a God asserting supremacy. Yahweh, once one among many Elohim, emerges from the conflict of divine factions as victor, his dominance sealed in flame and rain. The received texts are read as monotheistic testimony, but their roots betray plurality. Elohim is plural, councils of gods, gods of the nations, divine assemblies. They appear throughout Scripture. Psalm 82 says, Elohim stands in the divine assembly. He judges among the gods. These were not just poetic echoes. They preserved memory of a time when divine rulers oversaw territories, competed for allegiance, and waged conflict through human history. Over time, one of those powers, Yahweh, went from faction to throne. In this light, the story of Elijah reads like a field dossier. Yahweh begins by undermining Baal in climate. He supports Elijah secretly in wilderness. He invades Sidon. He forces the trial. On Carmel, he unleashes fire and reclaims rain. He eradicates rival prophets and finally ascends by extraction. This is not myth. It is strategic campaign inscribed for human minds under the cover of worship. What we perceive as miracles, fire from heaven, resurrection, chariots of flame, were the encoded language of divine operations. From Sumer to Babylon, the Anunnaki practiced weather manipulation, energy projection, remote contact, and extractions. These were dressed in myth and ritual to hide their mechanisms. In biblical recasting, these operations became sacred spectacle, miracles masking technology, weapons disguising themselves as wonders, protocols recoded as prophecy. Thus, the biblical record is not merely a book of belief, but a redacted war journal. The victors shaped it. They erased rival deities, recast violence as judgment, elevated rituals to holiness, suppressed the memory of infrastructure. But the structures linger. Prophets are agents, temples are terminals, sacrifices are alignment protocols. War did not end, it became doctrine. Reading Elijah's story as memory, not myth, restores what was buried. Covenant was conquest. Salvation was submission. Silence was not peace. It was enforced alignment. And now, we return to the moment we froze in the introduction. The soaked altar, the crowd holding breath, the heavens mute. Only now, we see it through the battle beneath the code. This was not faith tested, it was supremacy demonstrated. The gods did not coexist, one was silenced. Yahweh Elohim stood. The altar soaked, the trench filled, the crowd quiet, everything poised, waiting for the verdict. 2 altars, 1 test. Baal's priests lamented. Yahweh's prophet stood alone. Then fire descended, not flicker, but furnace, guided by invisible command. It consumed wood, flesh, water, stone. It steamed trenches dry. The air trembled. The crowd collapsed. Not in prayer, but in shock. This was not mercy. This was enforcement. The sky had answered command. Then, as Elijah had foreseen, clouds gathered. 7 summons later, rain fell. Calibrated, abundant, precise, not grace. Control restored, dominion regained. The drought was not reversed by pleading. The silence was shattered not by worship. The resurrection, the fire, the rain, they were all phases of a program. It was conquest authored in celestial code. The chariot that would carry Elijah home was not legend, but extraction. The mantle that passed to Elisha was not heritage, but transfer of command. In the drama of Carmel, Yahweh did not merely win worship. He silenced rivals. He claimed the sky. He asserted supremacy. Baal's cult collapsed. Yahweh's reign was written in flame, confirmed in rain, sealed by extraction. What fell on Carmel was not just fire. It was memory. It was sovereignty. And the final truth stands. The God who won that day was Yahweh, not because there were no others, but because he succeeded in silencing them. The scripture did not preserve devotion. It preserved conquest. And this is exactly what the Bible proves. Did you like the video? Leave a comment, hit the like button, and share this content with others interested in the topic. See you in the next video.